Oh man, come on. He's checking.
Police unions are calling out
Okay, I don't know what this is, but it's gone. Anyone can say that. Let's get our man lead. Where's last pass? Okay, so. Okay. So where's my bank account? So where's last pass on here? It's nowhere to be found. There's too many extensions, that's why. Here it is. Just open the window up, darn it. Just a little bit of smoke. What a dumb thing. There's no problem here. I'm surprised that such a little bit of smoke would cause that to go on. Not a lot of smoke at all. Okay. on that. Got carried away like that on the computer. What's the master password? You gotta go in there to get it. That's it. Shouldn't be so hard to install. Everything's fine. I'm gonna have to tell you the truth. It's well watch. No, you don't. Let that stuff smoke because it makes the slightest bit of smoke and it goes up. I'll leave it there, that's fine. Finish your meal. Okay, get this out of here. You may as well go back here.
Joe Biden's lack of support for law enforcement. The police union's coalition director saying, quote, for Joe Biden, police are shaking their heads because he used to be a stand-up guy who backed law enforcement. Clearly, he's made a lot of changes, the way candidates do during the primary process, but he kept moving left and fell off the deep end. Here to react is the president of the New York State Police Trooper Union, Thomas Mungier. Mr. Mungier, thanks for joining us today. What happened here? Because now you have that statement from Bill Johnson. Remember, the National Association of Police Organizations endorsed Obama in 2008 and 2012, specifically because Biden was on the ticket. Now this?
Yeah, it's amazing. Mr. Biden has shown support for police in the past. I know with my counterpart.
After President Trump heralded the new jobs numbers in the Rose Garden today, the media engaged in such a disgusting, perpetual smear job that we felt that it was our duty to call it out and the perpetrators. The claim was best summarized by Bloomberg News reporter Eric Wasson. He said, Trump says he hopes George Floyd is looking down from heaven and happy about the strong jobs numbers. Well, that is a lie. And that lie spread like wildfire among more prominent members like CNN's Jake Tapper and the New York Times' Peter Baker. It even made its way onto the cable airwaves. On MSNBC, Michael Steele, former RNC chair, that's embarrassing, called Trump's comments borderline blasphemous. Now, if the president had actually said what those media members were alleging, then his comments would be out of place and I'd call them out. But since we won't lie to you, here's what Trump said in its entirety.
Equal justice under the law must mean that every American receives equal treatment in every encounter with law enforcement, regardless of race, color, gender, or creed. They have to receive fair treatment from law enforcement. They have to receive it. We all saw what happened last week. We can't let that happen. Hopefully George is looking down right now and saying, there's a great thing that's happening for our country. There's a great day for him. It's a great day for everybody. This is a great day for everybody. This is a great, great day in terms of equality. It's really what our Constitution requires, and it's what our country is all about.
He's talking about equal protection under the law, regardless of race. Joining me now, Charlie Hurt, Washington Times opinion editor, former New York Post White House correspondent, Fox News contributor. Charlie, did you hear the jobs report mentioned in there? How do the media figures who I called out justify the blatant dishonesty and what they did? I'm mad about this.
It's not even a distortion of what he said, because they're always distorting what he says. This is a flat out lie. He didn't, they're making up something that he simply did not say. If you listen to his actual words, he's giving a shout out. He's applauding the peaceful protesters who are protesting the treatment of George Floyd. That is entirely different, 100% completely factually different from what people are claiming he said. But if you stop and think about it, and you go back to the beginning of just this year, this guy has been through an impeachment, which was entirely made up of lies, and then all of the stuff before the impeachment was made up of lies. The guy's been through a pandemic. He's been going through riots right now, and the good news, the stunningly good economic news that came out today, I think has a lot of these people in vapors. I think that they've got nothing left to do but to make up things about Donald Trump. And between now and the election, Laura, we're going to be listening to exactly this sort of thing, where these guys come unhinged and make stuff up every single day.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie, they thought the Mueller investigation was going to save them. Then they thought impeachment was going to save them. Then they thought the virus was going to save them. Now they think the protests and the riots are going to save them. And I think each time they're like, wait a second, this guy's really resilient. And I think they're freaking out about it. I think they're absolutely freaking out. And it's going to get worse. I completely agree with you. Now, the media's lies, they have real political consequences. Here was Biden.
Toward the end of his remarks, President Trump said he hopes that, quote, George Floyd is looking down and seeing this is a great day for our country. For the president to try to put any other words in the mouths of George Floyd, I frankly think is despicable.
Charlie, your reaction?
With a media like this, you kind of wonder, well, what else do you expect? But what you said in your angle is exactly right about this. All of these predictions, it's not only the lies after the fact, it's all of the prognosticating before the fact, from Russia to impeachment to the pandemic to all of it. The predictions have been the most dire predictions. They're fever dreams. They're dreams about anything. And ultimately what it is it's rooting for failure. They not only want Donald Trump to fail, they want America to fail. They would do anything. They will crash any economy. They want the country to burn to the ground.
Burn it all down.
Anything just to blame Donald Trump. And so now that all of these things, all of their predictions aren't coming to fruition, they're left with nothing else but just to lie after the fact. And they're going to keep doing it. And they're going to and you know what? The American voters are very, very cagey, and they're very smart. And even the people, that don't get paid like you and I do to pay attention to all of this all the time, and we live it day to day. They can tell when people are lying, and I don't think it's going to work in this election.
It's never seemly to be rooting against your own country or your own country's demise.
No.
We see that in a lot of the protesters, the activists, the violence, and it's not good. There are good protesters and a lot of bad stuff going on in between. Charlie, thank you so much.
You see all of these products? These are all products that we tried to sell on Amazon, and it didn't work at all. Let me show you some of these products. These are ridiculous. Look at this. Right here.
Get out of my sight, you creep. Come on with a loud voice like that. What an idiot.
All right, brand new information this hour from Sarah Carter, who will join us in a minute. She's reporting that the House Intel Committee chair...
What did I want to do here? I wanted to go to most watched to I think I've seen enough Fox News. I think you should go to the Rebel. Go to the Rebel. I've seen enough. Well, go to the Rebel.
Tonight, Rex Murphy says Canada is not racist, but some racists disagree. It's June 5th, and this is the Ezra Levant Show.
Why should others go to jail when you're the biggest carbon consumer I know?
There's 8,500 customers here, and you won't give them an answer.
The only thing I have to say to the government about why I publish it is because it's my bloody right to do so.
Thank God we live in Canada, where, as part of the British Empire, we abolished slavery 2 centuries ago, and the Royal Navy interdicted slave ships. We were literally the world's first do-gooders. But it wasn't about being woke, it was about being Christian. The whole anti-slavery movement was a Christian project, as told in the movie Amazing Grace.
One man will risk everything.
Payment in kind.
There's nothing you have I'd want, Your Grace.
He'd fetch at least 25 guineas.
The game is over. To speak for those who could not.
They do this to let you know that you no longer belong to God, but to a man.
To make the blind see.
We have no evidence that the Africans themselves have any objection to the trade.
And to lead a movement that would change the world.
Do it. Throw their dirty, filthy ships out of the water.
The slave trade has 300 MPs in its pocket. It would be just you against them.
So that's us. We're the good guys. We were the destination for the Underground Railroad, where slaves from the southern U.S. ran away to. I'm not saying there was never any slavery in Canada. In fact, slavery predates Canada. As I've shown you before, slavery was commonplace amongst different Indian tribes across the Americas, including in Canada. One more movie recommendation, if I may, Mel Gibson's Apocalypto, which takes place in the days before the Spanish landed in Central America 500 plus years ago. So we're lucky we escaped the moral calamity of slavery and its echoes, including Jim Crow laws in the States, which were segregation-style laws. I'm not saying things were perfect in Canada, certainly not from a 21st century wokeness measure. I mean, have you even read the Indian Act and its current racism that is in effect now? But still, we're doing pretty well. If you look at the top countries that are a source for Canadian immigration every year, you'll notice one thing about them. They are visible minorities. So unless hundreds of thousands of minorities every year are wrong, this is not just a good place to be, it is literally better than their own homeland. Somalis think we're better than Somalia. Bangladeshis think we're better than Bangladesh. As Ahmed Hassan himself said before he became a Liberal MP and turned bitter and racist, Canada's actually a better place to be a Muslim than most places in the Muslim world.
It is a fact lost on many Muslims, including Canadian Somalis, that it is countries like the United States and Canada that guarantee human rights and religious freedoms, that we can actually practice our faith best in these sorts of environment. The civil rights of our community members must be protected, but obviously it's also equally important to disseminate these integration-friendly messages in order to contribute to a process where our communities emphasize the defense and attachment to the countries of Canada and the United States.
So yeah, I'm not saying there aren't any racists among us, but our society is not racist as a culture. It's just an obvious fact. But look, it's just too useful for politicians on the left to whip up race baiting. It's too tempting. And so despite the fact that the recent race riots in America have precisely nothing to do with Canada, Canadian criminals and politicians have tried to make it our business, like these folks looting a guitar store in Montreal the other day. Yeah, do you think they could tell you a single thing about George Floyd or Floyd George or whatever they would say their looting was about? Here's a guy who seems deeply motivated by racial justice in Montreal.
Hey Ginette, ah ouais, là! Ok, mais là, oh! Ok, mais vous avez cassé le bail, mais personne rentre à l'intérieur! Bon, je crois qu'on a des nouveaux employés.
Well, if you think that's gross, look at this. They're guitars, not human lives. Montreal Merchant says getting looted was worth it to fight racism. I'm serious, that's a headline. Without any questions whatsoever, it's a noble demonstration, and it's clearly far overdue, says Lenny Lataine. Oh my God, you said that. The Liberal cabinet put out such forced statements about racism. It was so cringeworthy. Especially the white Liberal women of the Liberal cabinet, who didn't say one word, not one word, about Trudeau's blackface, and who happily stabbed in the back an Aboriginal woman, a woman of color, as they say, Jody Wilson-Raybould, when she became too uppity and forgot her place and was fired as Trudeau's justice minister. So yeah, spare me, Liberal white women of the Trudeau cabinet. Here's Justin Trudeau when he was asked about the race riots in America.
You've been reluctant to comment on the words and actions of the U.S. president, but we do have Donald Trump now calling for military action against protesters. We saw protesters tear gas yesterday to make way for a presidential photo op. I'd like to ask you what you think about that, and if you don't want to comment, what message do you think you're sending?
We all watch in horror and consternation what's going on in the United States.
That was a 21-second pause. Did he just sort of malfunction? Did he forget his memorized line? Was his earpiece not working? Did he want to insult Donald Trump, as he surely has been doing in private with the rest of his friends, but was telling himself to be better and not start an international incident? Or was he just, I don't know, still stoned again? I'm not being mean, I'm just asking a question. 21 seconds. Here's what Al Sharpton had to say about that.
This is the tipping point for changing how policing is going to be done in America. And I'm going to be forthright in that. The hope I have is I've seen as many whites marching as blacks. I've seen people old and young. It's a new day. The time has met the moment of change in America, and I'm going to express that in my eulogy. And since you're from Canada, I won't have a 21-second gap before I say what I have to say.
Ouch. I'm guessing Sharpton didn't forgive the blackface incident as easily as the white women in his cabinet did. So anyways, Rex Murphy weighed in on things in a brilliant column in the National Post, their most read item of the month for sure. It's this one: Canada is not a racist country, despite what the Liberals say. To any fair mind, Canada is a mature, welcoming, open-minded, and generous country. It would be helpful if these Liberals kept the full story of this country in mind when discussing racism. The full story, I think that's the key. In a country centuries old, with millions of people, there have been atrocious moments, either by today's standards or even by standards of the past, sure. But tell the full story, please. How much are racism and discrimination actually a part of Canadian reality? Are they overwhelmingly present? Are they, in McKenna's view, a central part of Canadian life? Where do they manifest themselves? Are some provinces more racist and discriminatory than others? Those are good questions, and I can assure you that Rex spent more time thinking about McKenna's statements than McKenna did. Do we not have welcoming immigration policies? Our largest cities, not a great montage of people from every corner of the world, of every color and creed? Do we not, both in private and public, to celebrate Canada's multicultural nature? Do our schools not press the ideas of tolerance and acceptance towards all peoples and all faiths from kindergarten through high school? Is it not a doctrine of Canadian civic life that to end any trace of discrimination or racism is a cardinal rationale for the very existence of modern Canada? Of course, I mean, it's so obvious, it's amazing that anyone had to say it. But what an outrage it was that he did say it. How dare he, the racist, by championing anti-racism and saying Canada was in fact anti-racist. Don't you know that thereby Rex just proved how racist he was? I mean, that's the riddle of it. If you say you're not racist, well, that is the proof that you are racist, because only a racist would say he's not racist. I saw this tweet in response by a co-worker of Rex Murphy. I unfortunately had to click on and read this horrifying column in its entirety in order to write an email to my editor expressing my utter disappointment that we decided to run it. There's no point reading it. I assure you, there's nothing to learn here. By the way, she didn't provide a link to Rex Murphy's article, just a screenshot of it. She didn't want to infect anyone else, you see. Here's what I wrote in reply to that comment. I said, a journalist telling people not to read the other side of the story is closed-minded, but a journalist telling people not to read her own newspaper is not trustworthy. Why would she continue to work there against her own conscience, not someone I can trust? That's the thing. I mean, her name is Vanmala Subramaniam, and as you can see by her LinkedIn biography, she is a business writer for the same newspaper. She writes for the Financial Post section of the National Post. And before that, she worked for Vice. And before that, she worked for Bloomberg. And before that, she worked for CBC. So you can see her life in Canada has been blocked by systemic racism. Just no opportunities at all. But like I said, what an odd reply to snipe at your own newspaper, but to take its money. It's almost like she was just virtue signaling. And actually, when push comes to shove, puts money ahead of principles. Well, to their credit, instead of firing Vanmala for disparaging their newspaper as racist, the National Post invited her to make her case. I confess I had never heard of Vanmala before, so I was unfamiliar with her work. I would have thought she would have taken this unique opportunity to make a convincing case, but yeah, no. Let me take you through some of it. It's quite remarkable. Here it is. She says, before you declare Canada is not a racist country, do your homework. Okay. I'm always open to doing homework. She says, Rex Murphy, the conservative commentator, former CBC radio host, and a 73-year-old white man, is convinced that racism does not exist in this country and that the vast majority of Canadians would never participate in it. Okay, hang on. Is that an argument? Her very first sentence, which I always think is the most important sentence, is chastising Rex Murphy for being a certain age and a certain race? You're an old white man. That's not an argument. And it's a little bit racist. She says that Rex effectively erases centuries of history that pertain to the founding of this nation. No, I'm not sure he did, by the way. I think he was saying that Canada is not a racist country. I'm not sure if he's going back to historical issues, and I'll come back to this, but she mocks Rex's points, including the fact that Canada had welcoming immigration policies. She recaps Rex's points with some spin, and then she says this: it is perhaps too obvious to state that someone who has absolutely no lived experience of racism, discrimination, bigotry, who has never been anything other than accepted, who has clearly no interest in really understanding race issues in this country beyond performative platitudes and slogans pushed forward by corporate institutions and the political class, should not be weighing in on the subject of racism. That's a lot of sociology terms there. So there you have that. It's like we talked about yesterday in my interview with Philip Slayton. You don't make arguments anymore. You just check the right identity boxes and it's decided. If you're a 73-year-old white man, don't even open your mouth. If you don't have a lived experience of racism, you should not be talking because your ideas don't work. Because no one has lived a tougher life than Vanmela Subramaniam, who was clearly born in the ghetto and had to sit in the back of the bus and drink from the water fountain that said colored people only and had KKK crosses burning on her front yard. I mean, the racist hardships she has faced in life, she can talk about Canada, but not you. And apparently, actually growing up poor in Newfoundland doesn't teach anyone about hardship and overcoming challenges, but working for Vice and the CBC does. Hey, can I stop and point out something here before I continue? Vanmela Subramaniam is not black. She's just not. I think it's a Tamil name. Tamils are rather newcomers to Canada. They weren't interned in the Second World War. That was the Japanese. They weren't given second-class citizenship and forced to live on a reserve. Those are Indians. Like I say, I had never heard of her before, so I just Googled her. And here's just a random sample of what I found.
Steve, there were a couple of sensible things I thought. So for one, just basic things like making sure there's no peak electricity rates for the next 45 days, deferring interest payments on student loans.
So I think I hear a foreign accent, as in she came here pretty recently. She hasn't actually lived Canadian racism herself. Neither did her parents, obviously, or her grandparents. They might have lived under racism, but it wasn't here in Canada. Subramaniam didn't hear stories growing up about, I don't know, how it was like to be Irish in Montreal in the 1850s, or how it was like to be black in Halifax in the 1920s, or Jewish in Montreal in the 1950s. So she's not from here. She actually doesn't know the lived experience here. In fact, the one thing she knows about is what she mocked Rex about, our welcoming immigration policy. That's her lived experience. What does she know about our past, racist or not, that Rex Murphy doesn't, who has lived here for 73 years and surely has memories of what his parents and grandparents told him, memories maybe that stretch back 400 years of Newfoundland. Yeah, if you're a newcomer, mocking someone for living here for 73 years is not persuasive when you're saying you know Canada better than Rex does. But remember who we're talking about here, a journalist in a newspaper. I'd never heard of this woman before. She looks modestly successful, I guess. Rex is a national star, easily the biggest draw in the National Post since the untimely passing of Christy Blatchford. But they're both writers for a living. They both depend on freedom of speech. But Vanmela Subramaniam has apparently decided that free speech is not a Canadian value. People like Rex should not be weighing in on the subject of racism. They certainly should not be allowed to declare that racism is over, nor be given a national platform to do so. Hang on. So it's one thing for her to say, I don't think you should talk. That's a kind of rhetorical bullying, just telling someone to shut up. That's not argument. That's not discourse. It frankly makes me doubt the quality of her journalism. Does she just tell people to shut up if they have facts or arguments that don't fit her preconceived narrative for a story? Sounds pretty close-minded to me, which is not the mark of a good reporter. But she moves quickly from I don't think Rex should weigh in to he should not to, she says, he most certainly should not be allowed to say that Canada is not racist, and certainly not in a national platform. So he shouldn't talk at all about racism, but if he dares to talk about racism, he absolutely should not say Canada isn't racist. And for sure, he shouldn't be given a platform for that. He shouldn't be allowed? Someone should stop him? Ban him? So now an employee of the National Post, who's worked there for 1 year and 10 months, according to her LinkedIn biographer, she's telling the newspaper that she definitely should never publish things that Rex Murphy has to say if she doesn't agree with them. I couldn't help but notice that Vanmela Subramaniam worked at Vice for also 1 year and 11 months before the Post, and she worked at Bloomberg for only 5 months before that. Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there, but it sort of makes me laugh that she's telling the National Post who is or isn't allowed to write in it. I wonder if that's why she left those other places. But what makes me cry after laughing is that the National Post ran this self-abasing piece, crapping all over them. Not that Rex Murphy shouldn't be challenged. Why not? And it's a good idea for the National Post to host debates, even about its star writers. Perfect place. But this is the argument. Hey guys, I'm brown, Rex is white, QED, debate over. Yeah, no, I don't think so. But let me show you one more thing. I mentioned that Vanmela Subramaniam is Tamil, I think. And that means a Tamil name, and she has an accent. So she's from Sri Lanka. So she's brown, not black. She's not African American. And I'm sorry to talk about these things. In my mind, this is all irrelevant. But it's the basis of her entire argument from her very first sentence. So would you permit me? So she's brown, a newcomer to Canada. Looks like she's never had a hard day in her life here. Came here to get away from her home country, I guess. But look at what she does. For the rest of the op-ed, she talks about anecdotes of black people. Let me quote. Because the Canada that Rex Murphy says is not racist is the same Canada where his own former black colleague, the esteemed television journalist Dwight Drummond, host of CBC Toronto's Evening News, was handcuffed by police, face down on streetcar tracks, with guns, plural, trained on him and his friend for the crime of leaving his home to get takeout in downtown Toronto, unquote. Okay, now again, I didn't know who she was talking about or what she was talking about, so I Googled it. So apparently, back in the year 1995, 25 years ago, Dwight Drummond was arrested, and people claimed it was racial profiling. So a 25-year-old anecdote, and let's say that that's accurately what happened. That let's just say it was because he was black. I don't know if that's a fact. Even if it were the case, is that your proof that Canada is a racist society? That anecdote. Let me read some more. It is the same Canada where the CBC investigative journalist Asha Tomlinson, another former black colleague of Murphy's, said her brother, while a teenager in the predominantly non-white Toronto suburb of Scarborough, was repeatedly stopped and interrogated by police on drives to the corner store over nothing. Okay, I hadn't heard of that either, so I read an article about this woman's brother as a teenager. When my brother was a teenager in the early 1990s, living in Toronto's eastern suburb of Scarborough, he would drive to our corner store to get candy and pop all the time. That is until he started to get stopped by police. They would question him, asking where he was going, why he was out at night. And that's it. That's the story. Again, maybe it was racism, although there's actually nothing racial about the story. Just a teenager being asked what he's doing out at night in a car by police. Could be because he was black. Could be because he was a teen. We don't actually know. Also, it's a 25-year-old anecdote, and that's your proof that the Canada we live in today is racist and why Rex Murphy has to shut up. She cites a few more anecdotes. There are plenty of anecdotes in a country of 37 million people. Some of them involve criminals or police shooting criminals or accused criminals. Some is just gossip. They're so rare that she has to reach back 25 years. It's hard to make that case. When so many police in 2020 are black, including, the chief of police for Subramaniam's own city, Subramaniam didn't live any of this, though. This wasn't her lived experience. I don't even know if she was here 25 years ago, judging by her accent and her age. So she didn't live this. But again, she's not black. And that's important because the black grievance in America comes in large part from their history of slavery. And then the history of segregation and Jim Crow laws. And I'm sorry, we just didn't have that up here. We just didn't, and thank God we didn't. But what's the angle here? Why is Subramaniam trying to appropriate the American black experience? She's not American. She's not black. She's not a descendant of American slaves. It's a bit pitiful, but I think it's transparent. I don't really buy into the concept of cultural appropriation. Subramaniam has appropriated the English language and other Western
something else
people for admirable qualities. I hope you... In English or a different language?
It's in English.
Yeah.
Mid-January. And in India, we thought it was just a Chinese thing happening over there.
Tamils. And I think that's great. I'm so glad Canada is a good match for the intelligence and entrepreneurial spirit of so many people. But stop pretending that you're a victim. Stop pretending that this country is racist. It's actually been far better to you than your... We know you like calling people names, but can you stop using dead American black men to promote your own Canadian careers as scolds? And if you want to take a run at Rex Murphy, try criticizing his arguments, not his skin color. You racists.
Right on. Right on. They're the racists.
Well, the other day when we had a barber here, I invited my friend Tarek Fatah, who I knew needed a haircut, to come and get his haircut too. And while he was here, I said, well, now that you look so sharp, let's sit down and have a catch-up. So this is a conversation Tarek Fatah and I had on Tuesday. And you know with Tarek, you never know where the conversation's going to go, but he's such a hoot. Take a look. Hey, welcome back. You know, I got a phone call from my old friend Tarek Fatah the other day, and we started to banter. I said, hey, come on in for a haircut, because we've got black market haircuts going on here at Rebel headquarters. And then we had a nice lunch, and I said, Tarek, instead of you and I just having a private conversation, I know a lot of our viewers love to hear what you're up to, because you're up to so many things.
Go ahead. I paid you under the table.
Well, it was a free haircut. It was a free haircut from us.
Okay. If you insist.
You know what? It's just so nice to see you and to see other human beings in person.
Yeah.
I think we're all sort of missing a little bit of that social contact. So give us an update. It's been months. I don't even think I've seen you this year. Last time we talked, you had a very hit show in India. You were talking about India and Pakistan and Canada and America. Give us an update. What have you been up to?
Well, I was in India till end of January. I knew this was coming because the coronavirus thing was coming up, because suddenly I saw masks being sold in New Delhi. And this was early mid-January. And in India, we thought it was just a Chinese thing happening over there. And people were talking about, oh, this is what happens when you eat animals and it's crossed over. Nobody thought at that time that this... So I came here February 3rd. I had my appointment with my cancer doctor, and it hit us. After a week, there were no flights out of India. I would have been stuck there, and I had gone there to do a series of shows.
Fatwa? Or is it another one?
No, this is What the Fatah.
That's such there's so many fun titles you can have with your name, but you have to pronounce them very carefully.
I recorded about 30 shows, gave it to them, and flew out. But many of them become redundant because the world changed.
Yeah.
And I said,
is this for what TV station is this for? Is this for a big channel in India?
No, this is the New Delhi Times trying to reach out through changing the print edition into a web paper.
Fair enough, that's
around
what we
the
do
world.
here.
Yeah. So.
And is it in English or a different language?
It's in English.
Yeah.
The New Delhi Times.
And have they started to put them up yet?
Yes, they are.
And that's the New Delhi Times.
New Delhi Times
well, we'll check
on YouTube. And people started listening to it because, first of all, it was in English and Hindi as well.
And we touched on issues that were specific to Indian society, for example, arranged marriages. And I had fun calling people up and said, can I,
make it arrangement? You're a matchmaker?
No, but because it would say, fair and lovely girl needs like well-placed Canadian or American.
Well, you're a well-placed Canadian.
And I said, I'm Muslim, I can have 3 more,
Your wife might have an objection to that.
But it was, the point was, Indians are so introvert. In 10,000 years, Indians have never invaded any other country, ever. Like, they are so happy with themselves, laid back.
Well, I remember you said India is like a whole world. I mean, there's more than a billion people, and the I've never been, but some of
Oh, you should.
The diversity of city. What are the cities you like to go to in India?
The south, Delhi, is a symbol for me of the plundering of India.
Oh.
Because it had a Muslim identity, but one that had contempt for the native population. And so, for example, the Indian Muslim is more likely to relish and portray the invaders of India as the heroes.
Now, the Taj Mahal itself is a Muslim shrine, am I right?
Yes, but made by Indian workers, Indian material, Indian river. We forget everything, and 200 years of the British too. They were so mesmerized by the caliphates of Turkey and for them, being a Hindu it's just in India. You don't have 15 Hindu countries.
Right,
The Organization of Hindu Countries.
Yeah, it's one person.
One guy.
Now, what about Mumbai? I've heard that's an amazing city.
Any place in India is worth visiting and observing because there is humility, there is color, there is language. There is nobody who says my language is superior than you. The culture mixes. There is a naivety in which the Indian Hindu is still psychologically damaged from over 1,000 years of occupation. It's like white minority rule in South Africa. So the Muslims came, butchered the native Muslims, but the Muslims of India and Pakistan only honor those who plundered India. They don't, for example, even know that Muhammad's family, Prophet Muhammad's family, had to take refuge in India under a Hindu king to save their lives. So we honor those who killed the Prophet's children and yet try to be Islamist.
How is India these days? Because I know Donald Trump has focused on his personal rapport with Narendra Modi, and they've both had rallies in each other's countries. Is that just a political tit for tat? Do you think they're genuinely friends? No. Is America and India getting closer as a triangulation against China?
Well, Chinese jets are flying 35 kilometers from the Indian border.
Well, I heard there was an incursion
yes, incursion
into Indian territory.
Yes.
What's that all about?
China today is, how should I put it in a mild, I won't put it in a mild way, is the evil empire that is out to destroy Asian African countries of their dignity. So you talk to Vietnamese, or you talk to Indians, you talk to Zambians, Eritreans, everywhere that China has gone has, by investing money and bringing their own workers who are usually prisoners.
Yeah, they're almost like indented. They're
no, it's
they
a
are
prison.
indented.
They
actually are prison
So
labor.
they shift their prisons. I'm talking of Pakistan. They shifted their prisons into what is Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and then they bid for contracts because their labor is free.
Yeah. Huh. Well, I'm shocked they haven't done that in Canada yet. It wouldn't surprise me if they do very soon.
They are there.
Now, does the Indian Prime Minister, does the Indian government, does the Indian media, does the Indian establishment regard China as a threat or an investor or a market?
This is the tragedy of corporate business, and this is why I'm on the left all the time, that the business community is least interested in the country they deal with. This is the reality. They're dazzled by China's money.
The new form of capitalism that has emerged after 1990 is, I don't give a damn about what happens to my country. I'm interested in the share value that I get. So an Indian businessman who's invested in China, or Chinese businessmen who manufacture 80% of India's cell phones, they don't, on the Chinese side, they're Chinese nationalists. On the Indian side, it's not so. Just like it's not so in how Zambia lost its sovereignty to China, or Zimbabwe. They've given loans, and then the country can't pay back the loans, so that they say, we'll take your city.
Yeah.
They've done it in Sri Lanka. They've done it in Bangladesh. It is the worst form of imperialism that is coming together with this notion that money can buy anything.
Now, imperialism is normally an insult directed at white Western European countries. But I agree with you, imperialism today, I think it's in many ways a Chinese phenomenon.
It is.
Where are the decolonialists of the left criticizing Chinese imperialism?
This is very significant because the pro-Chinese left in India, for example, which is the only place that has Maoists. The Chinese dumped Mao, but the Indian pro-Chinese, it's called the Communist Party of India, Marxist-Leninists, they are what are called the Naxals. Naxalbari was a town where the supposed Maoist uprising had to take place, failed down, but now Indian hardline urban rural guerrillas who are supposedly Maoists call themselves Naxalites. And they have a very bizarre interest. So you have all these millionaire Marxists, the Greta types, with expensive eyeglasses and who worry about the right of whales in somewhere in the South Pacific, or how about gay birds, all things that have nothing to do with the working people. So suddenly they've taken over the left after 1990. Places where Ed Broadbent used to win cannot elect a New Democrat anymore.
So that's in Canada. So
I'm saying the same.
And it's the same in India.
It's the same in India. The Communist Party of India that used to elect 40 to 50 members of parliament right across the country. It used to form government in 2 states. Kerala, which is the only Indian state with 100% literacy. They speak the Malayali language, a wonderful place, by the way. And this is where the Jewish community, after the destruction of the first temple, settled over there. So you have synagogues there as well. You should go there. All these places, the CPI or the CPM had, and in West Bengal, which is now almost an Islamist government over there, because the chief minister over there supports all anti-Indian Islamist parties from India's city of Calcutta. It's shocking sometimes because nobody is analyzing that the world's economy has changed, and therefore what you're studying about how to end poverty, how will it happen? How will we make sure that decent wages? Now, sometimes, of course, if there is no place to go to employment, the question of...
You can't weigh in on the subject and pretending she's some ghetto gangster with rapper street... But Eric, you never know where the conversation's going to go.
This was early...
Last time we talked, you were...
I don't have time. I'm not going to watch it. Okay, that's out of the picture here. We got to get doing what's important. Okay. I want to do my video and get the light setting just right. Now, Lauren, I don't know. That does seem like a really good deal, but what I would do is I would go and get the Lumbee on Amazon.ca. See if they have it there. Amazon.ca. Projector 93 Canadian. Doesn't have a high rating or anything. So you have to ask yourself, oh, this one has a high rating, but it's not a Lumbee. Why would the Lumbee be so great? Okay, I wouldn't bother with it. No. I don't think so. No. Sure doesn't have a high amount of reviews on here. Let's see what it has on Amazon.com. I don't see Lumby projector here. How come it's so cheap? There's no Lumby projector. Okay, in the States it doesn't even exist. Okay, so that's it. It's just in Canada. This one's only 93 Canadian. It's only got one review. I mean, you can't go by one review. So it must have just come out. It does look like a very useful device, and it's at such a low price. I don't get it. 135 Canadian. It's a lie that it's 50% off. Okay, is this one here Prime? I doubt it. No, it's not Prime. It's not Prime. So, if you go back, I want to look at that review. At least there's one review, right? I want to know what the person had to say in the review. It's not got very high reviews. No, it doesn't have high reviews. And they've got different names for it too, and it looks like it's the same thing. How can it be identical like that? Take a look. Oh, it disappeared. Boy, that's weird. These are given different names here in Tiny. There's 32 reviews in this one. Why would it look identical? I want to know where your reviews are. Well, I think I've seen enough now to know it, that I'm going to dismiss it. Okay. I learned enough. We're using different names and so on. We know it's garbage. Yep. Nope. They are just making it look like it's something when it's nothing. It's got exactly the same features, so it's just got different names it goes by. I'm not buying it. It's a lie. Get out of here. Glad I didn't get it. Okay, I'm gonna go and have a nap, and I'm gonna come here, turn on things, and get doing my message here. Let's have a nap, and then we're going to be getting that up. Doing lots of good things. Oh, it's on there. Oh, it must be already open. Oh, it's already open. I didn't know it was open. Okay, that's pretty good because there's no thing there. There's nothing there. I don't think you're going to get it better than that, so let's see if we can just live with that. But one thing I was thinking is that it might be better to have this camera off there so that I'm looking at it facing me even. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm thinking to myself, if I have the camera here, like that, I can still get it just right. No, there's more, it doesn't look as good there. No, it doesn't. It looks worse. It looks worse. Don't like that. Okay? Don't like it. Ah, for crying. Okay, maybe. I think that's as good as you're going to get it on that kind of a camera. The background is pretty good. I'm just checking this out to see how well it works, how well it looks, what you can see, what you cannot see on it. Okay. I don't know if you can see that. Anyhow, there you go. Checking the microphone out. Seeing if we got this set up right. Okay, we're going to turn her off. Okay. Let's open this up with, let's say, I don't care to always see it in, this one's a pretty good one. Look at it in. I'm just checking this out to see how well it works, how well it looks, what you can see, what you cannot see on it. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, there you go, checking the microphone out. Seeing if we got this set up right. Okay, we're going to turn it off. I'm just checking this out to see how well it works, how well it looks. I don't like it. I think I'm too close. I'm too close, yeah. It's too close up. That's one thing that you have to change on it. It's way too close up. Change the focus on the properties. You might want to put a filter on it, I don't know. But right now I want to get it a little further back. The zoom is a bit too close. My judgment, it should be about like that. I'd say that's a lot better. I don't think you're going to manage to get anything much else improved. It's a bit too dark. You'd like a little more light on being picked up, but it's not picking up a lot of light. Now that's because you've got the gain too low. That's better. That looks a lot better than I had it. I want to see how far I can go with this to get good lighting. I think that's a lot better. Now you've got proper lighting. I'd say that's a lot better. Okay. Okay. That's better. A lot better.